Good day to all. Hope everything is fine with my wonderful viewers. We're going to do a kind of part two talking about, this is specifically relating to the argument that people like Socrates and Alexander the Great cannot be found in the historical record. It is an utterly dud argument. It makes no sense at all. Though Christians do seem to want to say this sometimes, it strikes me as something they would read from Christians who don't understand the historical method or the historical figures that are often put up for this type of argument. There are plenty of evidences for all manner of people who were movers and shakers, I suppose. Important people who left a mark on history like Jesus Christ should have done, though we find no evidence for him. So we're just going to continue now. Alexander the Great. There are abundant problems if one wants to claim that there is no evidence for this seminal historical figure responsible for starting an empire from which we get the very place name of Alexandria, and who instigated the Hellenistic period. There exists an extensive account of Alexander's life written by the Greek historian Callisthenes of Olythanos, who lived between 360 and 327 BC, and who accompanied Alexander on many adventures and campaigns. His original writings are lost to history, but they are conveyed to us via other historians. Ptolemenos, I'm going to absolutely bastardize and brutalize some of these words, I apologize for that. Ptolemos the first, Soter, and Nekranos are three of Alexander's generals, all of whom left accounts used by historians and commentators later on. We will notice a far clearer line of information from what we can assume contemporary sources for Alexander. Aristobulus of Cassandreia was a junior officer in Alexander's army, and on Sikritos, Alexander's trusty helmsman, are also named sources in subsequent histories chronicling Alexander's campaigns. A transparent lineage from people, some of whom we have independent corroboration for also having existed, can be referred to. Diodorus Sikelaitos wrote the Universal History during the 1st century BC and covers Alexander's many exploits. The histories of Alexander the Great, written by the Roman historian Quintus Curtius Rufus in the 1st century, as well as the Anabasis of Alexander, of Alexander, are written by the Greek historian Arianos of Nicomedia in the early 2nd century, and the life of Alexander the Great, written by the Greek biographer and Middle Platonist philosopher Polchurakos of Ksheranimi. This guy here, I've got him up on, you can see him, around 100 AD, as well as the epitome of the Philippic history of Pompeius Trogus, written by the Roman historian Lustinus, also in 2nd century AD. Speak voluminously of Alexander. These accounts act as a decent literary paper trail, and we must remember that these historians are known historians and not just people with names who otherwise don't exist in the historical record, such as the named writers of the Synoptic Gospels. That's an important point to note. There's obviously a lot going on for these guys to have written subsequent pieces and histories on Alexander. These men wrote on other subjects and are solid literary heroes in their times and today. Yes, we have more ancient evidence as well in the form of archaeological information from a variety of places. The decree of Philippi was a decree involving Alexander in which a land dispute was settled. It reads, whatever land given by Philip to be cultivated by the Thracians, as well as the land Alexander gave them, whatever land given by Philip around Cyrrhus and Danieros is to be possessed by Philippi, the wood at Diosforum, not to be sold by anybody until the delegation of Alexander come back. The swaps belong to Philippi till the bridges. The swamps. Jesus Christ, what's wrong with me today? The swamps belong to Philippi till the bridges. It takes the form of an inscription found on 2 columns and was discovered by Byzantine church. At a Byzantine church in Philippi in 1936, and likely dates to the time of Alexander. An inscription dedicated to Apollo was discovered at Tuombes Calatur. In it records a list of priests of Asclepius who, via exceptional work to the church from the time when King Alexandros offered the region to Kalindioa and the villages around Macedonis. An inscription by Zeus, by Philonides of Crete makes mention of King Alexandros. Hemerodimos found where Olympian once existed. Okay, the Pyrenean inscription found in modern Turkey and contemporary to Alexander was found in one of the walls of the temple of Athena, Poleis. The Lindos Chronicle, which stood in the Acropolis of Lindos in a sanctuary dedicated to Athena, and it bears Alexander's name as well. There is a mention of Alexander in Egyptian hieroglyphs at the Temple of Luxor, dating to 332 BC. There is a beautiful and near contemporary sarcophagus dedicated to Alexander, whose body was evidently never found whilst on a campaign in India, though carved and dedicated to the hero king. We have an account of, and it goes on and on. I mean, we have an account. We have an account on Alexander, the Alexander Chronicle, on a Babylonian tablet signifying his victory over Darius III, dated to 330 BC, and the subsequent pursuit of Bessos, a Persian turncoat and traitor after the Battle of Gaudamelia. Bessos. That means kisses in Spanish. Interesting. Another chronicle, the chronicle concerning Alexander and Arabia, gives detail regarding the last few years of his life. There are, in addition, and significantly, a plethora of ancient coins with Alexander upon them, which one can buy to this day. Coins are perfect examples, by the way, of archaeology used to evince a character's historicity, as they are invariably dated to the time of the figurehead in question. There is mention of Alexander in the Old Testament, 1 Maccabees 1, in Daniel 8:5-7, and 21:22 as well. There even remains a land bridge to Tyre that exists to this day and is reputed to have been built by Alexander's troops while laying siege to Tyre itself, connecting the island to the mainland. These and more examples of Alexander the Great, having most definitely existed, both contemporary and near contemporary, are solid and should make anyone wonder why many Christians use this example. This man lived hundreds of years before Christ, and though it's true that Alexander did more, engaged far more with external peoples and forces, engaging in epic battles and so on, it's simply untrue that historical personages with large followings leave no trace of their existence, whether literary or archaeological, especially when you're, doing so much and feeding people with paltry, meals, and they're getting fed, and thousands of them, and you're dying and rising, and you're making miracles and walking on water and all the rest, and you're doing so many things as per John, you'll get what I'm saying. It should then indeed seem strange, owing to the footprint Jesus should have left according to the auspicious, even incredible stories left us in the New Testament, that no mention of him is made in his lifetime. There were a veritable army of officials, Jewish and Roman, document keepers, literate lawyers and rabbis, new converts, commentators and historians who could and would have offered up some passing reference or comment about a King of Kings, the Son of God himself, who performed so many great works during his short ministry on earth. But this is not what we find. Nothing extant during the reign of Tiberius tells us anything out of the ordinary happening in Judea. It was relatively peaceful. Things were not to heat up until years after Jesus' supposed crucifixion. Conversely, Tacitus tells us, conversely, I think, well, whatever I meant there. Tacitus tells us, under Tiberius, all was quiet in his histories, 5:9 there. As already stated, it takes decades for the first gospel to be written, some 40 years at the very earliest, a full generation in ancient Hebrew terms, and this is when we notice the language of the Gospels talking of unrest and war, obviously even desolation. So under Tiberius all was quiet, but we don't get that in the Bible, in the New Testament. There's, I come to bring a sword kind of talk. Then we see Jesus' words of coming with the sword. So I'm repeating myself. And taking up your cross, a double entendre for going to war, seem to fit far more. Many have noticed the anachronism. It's after the Jewish war is won and lost that we begin to see the first reverberations from the New Testament texts. But there are problems with these. And very quickly, I'm not going to go on for too much more. Even a standard reference work like the New Interpreter's Bible New Testament Survey notes that where Paul might have appealed to the memory of Jesus for support, he failed to do so, and that the apostles seem fixated solely on Christ's death and resurrection, and the apostle here, and it's true, the apostle Paul does. As for the other great events of the Messiah's earthly ministry, there is a deafening silence. I'm going to leave it there. But I hope that serves to show that there is a big chasm where Jesus existed, and a hell of a lot of information that we do have when it comes to people like Alexander. I'm sorry, this was an absolute train wreck of, I think, a narration. Apologies for that, but I wanted to get something out anyway. I hope this is interesting. I'll make sure that the visuals tell you more of a story here, and I'm going to ensure that you can see what I was talking about. I'm going to give the names for many of these Greek historians and so on. Anyway, hope you have a good day, night, so on. Take it easy, guys. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.